So, Maggie and Kathy, thank you for joining me. I really just wanted to go through this article that Scott Jackson of the Sun wrote, which Mayor Koch is defending his salary increase. Okay, so he says here, first of all, the only person who can bring a raise in for the mayor is the mayor. So it's awkward to begin with, very awkward. And I wanted to pause there and say, I actually understand where he's coming from. I think it would be awkward to have to give yourself a raise, but, that's the job. And then he says, as I said from day one, the city is thriving. It's not by accident. We're working hard. I've had one raise in 17 years. And then that's where I wanted to pause, because he just said that it's up to him to initiate the raise process. And then he seems to lament that he hasn't gotten a raise except for once in 17 years. And I think those things are important to point out. It's like, this was his job to do. If the raises should have been done, I believe he should have been putting in a system where, as a longstanding mayor, he needs to make sure that these raises are done in a responsible way. I don't think waiting a decade and then exploding the budget with a huge raise is the right way to go. But I wanted to see if you guys, am I off there? Like, you guys have
No,
any...
I don't think you're off, Joe.
Okay.
I would go back to the point about being awkward too. I worked in the corporate world for a long time, and if you wanted to get ahead in the world, yes, you did advocate for your own salary. However, you always made sure that that salary made sense and that it was not in a range that was ridiculous. I had to do it time and time and time again, in part to make sure that as a woman, I was being paid the same as my male colleagues. But that wasn't really ever a problem. So what are you talking about? It's awkward. He later in the article refers to the private world. If you want to live in the private world, love, you've got to be honest, upfront, and knowledgeable about what you're asking for. And I found that he failed.
And I actually just wanted to mention that when I looked back at news articles about the last time he had requested a raise, I found it very interesting, the process that went on there. So I guess in 2014, he asked for a 30% raise. Yeah. And apparently at the time had put into place a 5-person committee, I believe, that he handpicked. And city councilors at the time pointed out that 3 of those 5 people had been donors to his campaign. So the process by which he did his last raise was also not the most objective. And he also, at the time, the city council said 30% is unheard of, and at that time, the 30% would have put him in the top of all government workers in the state, basically. And so what was also interesting about that process is I believe it said that there were like 6 votes in the city council meeting about this, because different people had different opinions. And so they kept saying, okay, they had a vote, should it be 0%? And people didn't vote for that. And should it be 30%? And people didn't vote for that. And eventually they settled on 23%. So I also think that's an interesting difference with what happened here, because the council was pushing back more. And
you read my mind, because this is a failure on their part as well. I mean, it's their job as our representatives to get us the best deal. I mean, it almost feels like this process is more about taking care of Mayor Koch and less about taking care of the taxpayers of Quincy.
And this position, in line, as the consultant's report suggested, in line with positions of a like experience, like responsibility, was much greater.
People will say, well, town manager is different, city manager different. They all put the pants on the same way. They all come out and work. That salary's a salary. So I just wanted to express that a little bit.
There's no vacation time, there's no sick time. It's a 24/7 job.
There's a way to do this that's fair to both sides, and it seems like they were just concerned with the one side. And so, moving on, I hate the city is thriving argument. Not, I think that's subjective. I think there are people that believe the city is thriving, and I think you could talk to a lot of people that think the city is not thriving. And it's okay to have those differences of opinion.
Joe, I don't think anybody, at least amongst us and our core group, has ever taken away what good Mayor Koch has done. It's a bit whiny
Yeah.
that he's going on about this. And I've always objected to whining. Yes, sir, you did good things. However, did you do 80% good?
Yeah.
That type of raise is unheard of in the public or private sectors.
It is, and I feel like they're trying to right a wrong that they see. The wrong they see is, oh, he hasn't been given enough pay raises, so we're going to give him a monster one.
There's 9 years that there was no compensation.
Today, let's make sure then we're talking about that and we're talking about the process. If we're setting this up to say we're making up for the last 17 years of mistakes, fine.
The position here at 150,000 is grossly underpaid. And I came from the private sector after 40 years, and I've been around for 20 years now. And I could never understand how the boss of what I consider the company here, Quincy, is getting out salaried by the majority of his employees. And he's out 24/7, 7 days a week, he or she.
And that's irresponsible because it's not a one-time Christmas bonus here, because public sector, that's not a thing. This is now the new salary of the mayor of Quincy going forward. And
I don't need him.
And we're probably not supposed to care about this, but he mentions it later. This is going to have ripple effects across the nation.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel a little queasy about that. So the next thing I found interesting was this next one. Wow, I'm surprised this is... I've always found it interesting when you look at chiefs of police and fire superintendents, city managers, town managers, nobody blinks an eye about their salaries. But when it's elected position, everyone gets all worked up. I couldn't disagree more. Every year when they publish the Quincy salaries, I guess the mayor is not on Nextdoor or Facebook because there are a lot of people that notice how much the chief of police is making and the fire superintendents. I think he's a little bit in a bubble here if he thinks that we aren't having things to say about those other positions. Am I wrong?
I think so too. And one of the things, my son is a police officer, and a lot of times police officers' salaries are very high due to overtime.
And
So,
I wonder too if that overtime, that doesn't go towards your pension, towards their pension,
no,
right? It would just be the salary. Because when I was looking, Boston actually puts all of their salaries online, which is another difference with Quincy. And there too, police officers were making much more than the mayor because of overtime, more than their own salaries in overtime. But that doesn't go to the pension, so it's a difference as well
it's a
with
financial difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving on. This one is a peach. I saw signs out front, a backroom deal. This was not a backroom deal. This was very open from the beginning. We announced we were getting an outside survey. We shared the outside survey, and of course the press immediately goes to the top number. All hell breaks loose.
I didn't see them share anything.
I mean, I think what they consider sharing is not what I would consider sharing. I think technically they make these little announcements on the site. I don't know where they do it, but I was actually going to bring that up later with you because I came across the city council meeting you were at, and I was proud of you for speaking and actually having some foresight. but I don't want to get too far ahead here. But then, so first of all, I don't remember too many signs about a backroom deal. I think he's creating a little bit of a straw man here. Like he wants to like pretend offense, like so that people, feel for him a little bit here. I think what we're bothered by is he goes on to say also the city council hadn't had their raise in 10 years too, so we included them. And I think that's where I felt like there could be some, conflicts of interest, because basically the city council is getting, whether they see it this way or not, they're getting paid to approve the mayor's increase by having their own increase tied to it, even if it is a separate ordinance. Also, he says here, we did it by ordinance form. We didn't have to. We wanted it to be in the open. I didn't know what he meant there. Does anyone know what other way he's speaking of?
No, I don't understand it. Wasn't the one that was 10 years ago, Maggie, was that by ordinance as well? I thought it was.
I thought so. It sounded like it was. And the other thing is, I think that, because it's part of the city budget and it's a change to the budget, I think the city council has to approve changes. They can't add anything, but they can take things away.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he's talking about either. I was wondering about that myself.
Yeah, I'm. There might be some nuance that he's talking about, but this goes back to our repetitive point that this is all too mysterious for the general public. I never know what they're up to, and here we are with this statement that he seems to be getting some mileage by saying he did it as an ordinance, when here we are, three people that are following us pretty closely, and we don't know what he means by that. But I think this is more of the woe is me stuff that's bothering me. And none of this is happening because people don't like the mayor. None of this is happening because we think there's backroom deals going on. We don't know if there's backroom deals going on. But even if you assume everything they're talking about has been up front, the numbers are just outrageous, and they're inappropriate. So I wish he would stop that, because I don't think it's a good look to like constantly saying, "Oh, they just don't like me," or he says on later,
childish.
It is a bit, and I'm concerned when I read stuff like this, because I don't think it's good for the public discourse, because it shuts people down, because nobody wants to be seen as like tossing rocks at this guy. And so I think a lot of the public, they get uncomfortable when they hear stuff like this. But anyway, and then he says, Scott, this is Scott talking now, not the mayor. He goes, one of the concerns raised by residents opposed to the raises was that there wasn't a public hearing on them. And then he goes on to say, the council had held a public hearing on the budget on May 13th after the release of the Dormanson Consulting report, but before the mayor put his salary request forward. And I looked at that May 13th council meeting, and who do I see there but Kathy? And Kathy is speaking against the budget, or at least against a couple points in the budget, and has the foresight to say, also, this report just came out, and it's recommending, and I was like so proud of you, because I was like, wow, like you were ahead of that. And I knew about the report, but I never.
A consultant's report has come out recommending between $150,000 and $220,000 increase to the mayor's salary. And I don't know yet if there's also going to be an increase in your salaries for the city council. It wasn't included in this budget. So that means that there's no public hearing, at least right at the moment, for that. Will there be a public hearing on the mayor's salary increase? That's a substantial amount of money. It will impact our budget. That's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Will I get answers?
Yes, you will.
Thank you.
I'm surprised Scott's even bringing this up because it's not a public hearing, and I mean, like what we're talking about. But he's putting it up as if, well, there sort of was a public hearing on this, and maybe not enough people showed up, but it's totally different. There was nothing really to speak about unless you're Kathy and see like in the distance. So to say that, oh, you could have spoke against the budget May 13th, long before this all solidified, I think is disingenuous. There was no public hearing.
It's specious. It's a red flag, and I forgot about the May 13th meeting, but I remember exactly what I said. I said, and will we have a public hearing for the mayor's raise? And of course, you never get an answer.
You
I
even said
even
at the
asked
end,
it.
am I going to get answers to these questions?
Oh, yeah, McCarthy said yes.
Thank you very much.
Will I get answers?
Yes, you will.
I never got an answer.
No.
So the other thing is this, I'm not going to tell the council how to run their meetings. That as well sounds disingenuous based on what I've heard about how meeting agendas are set up. So the mayor's chief of staff, Chris Walker, attends every council meeting, and as I understand it, sets the agenda with I believe, the president of the city council. So I think that there's quite a bit of influence in what happens at city council meetings, and I'm not sure that things would go onto city council meetings that aren't approved by the mayor's chief of staff.
So, and then he says this had plenty of public publicity out there, and it was done over a couple meetings. It was explained and talked about. That's just
Baloney.
yeah, that's just very upsetting because as people that were at all these meetings, that's not how it went at all. It was they mumble, they don't tell you what they're talking about.
Speed reading.
Speed reading, the
2024-087 order. Motion to waive the reading. Motion to approve by Councilor Liang. On the motion. (2024-087 order). Motion to waive the reading. Motion to approve by Councilor Liang. On the motion.
one counselor doesn't even know what they're exactly voting on. Everything is manipulative to get things passed, and because once it's passed, they're willing to deal with the fallout because they feel like it'll go away, which is why what we're doing is so important, because I want them to stop feeling so confident that they can get away with just blowing things by people like this.
Which they have
Well,
been.
we didn't even know that the votes for the final votes on both raises, as well as the final votes on both raises, were not even on the council agenda. They weren't even on the council agenda. But when I asked my counselor ahead of time, he said, "Oh yeah, we're going to be voting on that." And I found out later that once something passes through successfully, like a committee, as on June 3rd, the mayor's raise went through the finance committee. They don't have to put it on the agenda that goes out to the public. It can be voted on. It can come up at any future meeting. And I was told by the clerk that usually it's the following meeting, but it doesn't have to be. And I said, well, how would we find out what meeting it's at? And I said, would we reach out to you? And she said, no, you'd have to reach out to the chair of that committee that it came from. So it requires the public knowing which committee something came out of, finding the chair of that committee and getting an answer from that person about when the vote will take place. And based on my experiences getting answers from city councilors, that's not a good system. So the fact that they don't have to put the votes for things like 79% raise and 50% raise out to the public means that the public won't know when those votes are happening and how to stop them or come and protest them. I mean, that's a problem.
It really, the mayor has a quote here. This was very, very upfront, and all the information was out there. My God, it was almost done undercover.
Yeah, it really was, and they hid it in bureaucracy, and they know what they're doing when they do that. They know that they hide it with legalese, they hide it with procedural moves, like the one Maggie was just describing.
Yeah.
And it's not fair, and it doesn't encourage the citizenry to be involved, and it explains why a lot of them just shut down and give up, and it's too bad. And then he says, I think folks that are complaining would complain if it was a $10,000 increase.
Oh, baloney.
Oh my gosh.
I don't even want to touch that one.
No, I don't either.
That just makes me mad.
It makes me mad too, and it's more the woe is me stuff. The bottom line is the new salary is completely out of line with what mayors of cities of his size are making. And he can try to compare, grapes to apples all he wants, but that doesn't change. I mean, this is $260,000 more per year than we were paying in 2024. And they keep saying it's about the position and not the person, but I don't think they really believe that.
I just want to reiterate that this is about the position.
Our job is to set up processes, not about the person, but about the system to ensure that this.
I think they think the mayor knows how to do the job of 3 different people. That's why this is fair. But if it's about the position, you've got to stay within the mayor to mayor salary range, because the next mayor might not know how the cemetery department works. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And I agree with you totally on that one. And I think it is regrettable that in actuality, I believe Mayor Koch has made it about him. And rather than thinking through that it's about a position, they're just talking that it's about the position, but in fact, it's about Mayor Koch.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I've been very, and I'm not going to change now, but I've been very relaxed about not mentioning pensions and retirements, because I'm a little uncomfortable talking about people's retirement plans. But there are circumstances surrounding the timing of all this that are hard to ignore, that I think even make it more so about the person rather than the position. And
You're right.
I'll just say one last thing is, I said this on Joe C's show. This affects 10 people, and all 10 of those people were on the ballot last fall, knowing the salary. They all agreed that they wanted to do at least one more term at that salary. And within really a couple months after taking the oath of office, are agreeing to a tremendous raise. And I think it's really unfortunate. And I think some of them know it's unfortunate because they're being very quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like for that to be one of the first things that they do after getting elected seems like a very strange set of priorities, and for them to rush through it as if there was some urgency in any way, it makes no sense at all. We could have waited, we could have had public hearings, we could have discussed a better process first, and then voted in raises, because I think all of us think that there should be a fair system for raises. I think that to dismiss our concerns, like you were just saying, as kind of sour grapes, we don't like the mayor personally, it's really dismissive. I mean, I've seen people online saying that the people against this are a lynch mob. I just think, like,
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not. There's
I haven't seen those.
No, I think, like, all of us are coming up with doing research and putting out graphs and stuff. I mean, it's a
That's
very
almost
gentle.
hysterical. It's
I
a very
know.
gentle
So, but that seems like the narrative that is being pushed, that, that we're just a bunch of disgruntled
Yeah.
people who don't like him personally. But it seems like there's just so many reasons to be against these particular races. And excuse me, I'm glad that as we get out there and we're talking to people, it seems like when you're hearing this story from the mayor or some people who are his supporters online, you start to feel like, oh, does this just not make sense to me? But in fact,
doesn't make sense to a lot of people.
oh, a lot of people from all ranges and
All the
backgrounds.
demographics, yes.
All the demographics, all the backgrounds. People in the poll had said, they voted for Mayor Koch. They had always been a supporter, but they couldn't support this race. So, yeah, I think it's absolutely incorrect to say that only people who didn't support him are against this.
Well, and I'd like to say the 79% is almost like a bellwether. Okay. And then I start looking at fiscal responsibility all the way down the line. And in particular, close to $1.5 billion worth of debt. And I've heard online again, people saying, well, why are you worried? You're not going to pay it. I'm not supposed to care about future generations. Wow. No, I do care.
Well, I know the mayor is under the impression that I'm a Mayor Koch detractor, and there are certainly reasons to believe that. I was really excited to have Anne run. I really liked Anne's platform, what she stood for. I liked her. She seemed more interested in the environmental stuff that I was interested in, and I thought basically we had, it was time for some new management. Not for any particular reason other than you can be in office too long. And but one thing I always thought about the mayor is I thought you couldn't question his devotion because the salary isn't that great. He is due for a bit of a raise. And the fact that he was working as hard as he works for a pretty modest salary, I thought, well, you can't totally diss this guy because, he's obviously not in it for the money. And then this happens, and it just takes away one of those things I was like latched onto. It's like, was this always in the plan? That when we get to the end, we're gonna push something ridiculous through. I don't know, but they're all too smart to think that this is right. I don't believe for a second that any of them really think this is right. And that's sad to me because they took an oath of office to protect the taxpayers, especially the city council. I might be more disappointed with them than I am with the mayor because they're supposed to be our representatives. And the mayor's supposed to represent us too, but they are, some of them are ward councilors. They're voted by their community. And for almost none of them to have anything to say about this. If you look at what has changed in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, there were city councilors saying, what are you talking about? No one gets a 30% raise, and they talk it down. Here, they're up there lawyering for them, trying to convince us that, I keep saying they're gaslighting us. They're trying to convince us that this makes sense when there's no real way to do that. And it's just a little bit sad.
It is sad.
Well,
But I also am so excited to see the sheer number of people that have I've never seen civic engagement in Quincy like what I'm seeing right now. And if the city council and the mayor don't stand up and listen, I think that's a terrible mistake on their part.
yes, I agree. Any final thoughts?
I just want to remind people that we're having a big event on Sunday afternoon at City Hall Plaza at 2 o'clock on July 7th. We will invite people, since the public wasn't invited to weigh in on this by the city itself. We will do our own kind of public hearing and rally, and we've got at least one live musician, a DJ, ice cream, and people will be able to also share any feelings that they have and any hopes that they have for how they want the city to run. So we can strengthen our community just by talking about this.
Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you Sunday, I hope.
So we keep going. Whoever keeps talking, please stop with the comments and let me finish. And we're not going to have any talking out of the audience. I asked right at the beginning for respect and to keep the issues between us here, so I don't want to hear any more comments. They all put the pants on the same way. That salary's a salary. So I just wanted to express that a little bit.